Hey there, everyone. My name's Amanda, and I am back to talk to you about a little update I've got. If you've been following my past life in the Civil War journey, it feels like every time I think I've kind of wrapped up the lessons there and I'm trying to move on or move forward, something new comes to the light. So there must be more that I have to learn, and I hope that my journey is somehow speaks to you as well. This one's probably going to be a difficult one for me to talk about, so I'm just going to warn you ahead of time. I've been really getting a lot of nudges, though, that it's something that I need to discuss, so here we are. And I think in a lot of ways, I'm maybe still processing the new information that I've just received. So some parts of it I'm probably going to keep to myself, but I'll share the things that feel like they're relevant to share. That all to say, so the other day I was meditating, and I didn't set any type of intention to do a regression or anything like that. I wasn't really trying to explore anything from the past. Really, I just set an intention to heal whatever needed to be healed. And partway through, like when I finally got into that place of deep meditation, I had a vision. I should probably warn you before I speak further. What you're about to hear is going to be pretty frank talk about death. So if that is very triggering to you, probably click off right now. It won't be too graphic, and frankly, I believe that death is something that we should be more comfortable talking about, since it's a completely normal, natural part of life. But like I said, if that's something that will bother you to hear about, please do not listen to the rest of what I have to say. That being said, the vision that I had was basically, I remembered Sallie's death. And I also want to say before I go forward, I don't speak unless I've done my research and thought through what I'm about to say. So I'm not, as much as I am an Aquarius and I am somebody who's very spiritually connected and I use my intuition every day as a professional tarot and oracle card reader, I try to stay very grounded also in my approach to things, and I use my logical mind as well. I have done a lot of historical research on Sallie's story and John's story, and now Blackburn's story. And there's still a lot more to be discovered there, and I'm planning to do some more looking into things. But most of the visions or memories that I've had, I've actually been able to verify with provable historical fact. So I'm not just spewing things at you or telling you things that I haven't verified or I don't really believe are true. Even this vision I've had, I was actually able to prove that parts of it were absolutely real. So, and if you want to ask me more about how I know that or what research I've done, I'm happy to answer your questions. I think I'm going on all kinds of tangents to try to avoid what I'm here to say. So, anywho, in the memory that surfaced for me, I went to sit down at a windowsill. It was a window seat with like as if it was a big picture window that had three sides, so like a front with two side panels, and I just remember small square shaped panes of glass. So I went to sit down at this windowsill. I remember feeling very tired. I stood back up, felt a pain in my chest and I collapsed. A man came running and caught me as I fell. And I assumed that this man was my husband. He had dark hair and a mustache, and that's all I really remember of him. His presence was incredibly familiar to me. I'll say that. What happened, so I collapsed, and he went and grabbed me and held me in his arms, and I began to convulse in his arms. Now, as that happened, so right as that happened, the weird thing was I did not feel any pain, really, other than that initial pain in my chest. I didn't feel any pain or any distress as all this was happening. I actually felt, as he grabbed me in his arms, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace and safety and comfort. And as I started to have more bodily reactions to, Sallie passed away of congestive heart failure, and so I would think that would be pretty painful, and but I didn't feel any of that pain. I just felt a deep comfort and an understanding that I wasn't alone and that I was being sheltered in somebody's arms. And as the more violent part of my death started happening, I actually experienced the moment when my soul separated from my body. So I was now watching what was going on in this vision, and I was watching myself, die, and this man just holding me, and that was pretty much it. And then I got these flashes of green light in my awareness, and then that was it. It's very difficult to explain what it feels like to witness your own death or remember your own death from a previous lifetime. And if it's something that you haven't experienced, then I'm sure what I'm saying probably sounds a little like out there. It felt very real to me at the time. And I also know that I've been shown this for a reason. I have been wondering for a while about Blackburn Hughes. I should probably backtrack and say, so in case, I sometimes talk as if everybody else knows all these people and has done all the research I've done. So Sallie Dandridge was engaged to John Pelham back when the war was still going on. So in 1862, in October, they got engaged. He passed away the following March in a cavalry charge. So 1863, Sallie's fiance, John, passed away. She was incredibly grieved by that experience. I don't believe she ever really processed her grief fully, which is why I have had to do some of that work in this lifetime. And 10 years later, Sallie married a man named Blackburn Hughes. They were married in September of 1873. They had a daughter named Lena Dandridge Hughes in 1874. Lena passed away at 3 months. About a year later, they had another daughter named Sallie Dandridge Hughes. She was nicknamed Birdie. And little Sallie, Birdie, passed away 15 months later. So Sallie had to go through a lot of not only the loss of one of the great loves of her life, but she also gave birth to 2 daughters who died in infancy. which was also incredibly devastating for her. Her life was marked by a lot of grief at a pretty young age. She lost John when she was 23, and she only lived a few years after Bertie passed away. And she died of a heart condition, and spiritually that usually means you're just carrying a lot of grief that is stuck in your system and literally kills you. Back in the Victorian age, they actually acknowledged that you could die of a broken heart, and I think that's pretty accurate to what went on with Sallie. But, for a long time, I didn't have any memories of her husband, Blackburn. And it's hard to find a lot of information on him other than that he was an attorney for the Confederate government during the war. And after that, he was still an attorney. I was able to find his last will and testament. So he survived Sallie. He got married, I think, about 9 or 10 years later to a woman who was 22 years younger than him, named Mary Perry, and they did have a son, and he passed away, I think, 2 years after she gave birth to their son. All those facts to say, so you have kind of a groundwork for who I'm talking about. It always confused me why I couldn't really remember much about Blackburn and why that part of Sallie's life was pretty much a blur. And I had a bit of an assumption early on that maybe he wasn't very loving or they didn't have a good relationship. I realize now that was a total defense mechanism, because I think he loved her very much, and I think what it was just she was so sad. She just never got over her grief, and it really affected her ability to fully love him, which is really sad. The big lesson for me that's very humbling looking back is, wow, someone was standing there the whole time wanting to love me, and I couldn't open my heart up again. And that's really a shame. But this memory, I'm trying to describe in words a feeling and an experience that is really quite impossible to describe in words. But I had a few pretty profound realizations in reliving that experience, and the first one was there is an incredible comfort in understanding that you didn't die alone. That's a pretty big gift that somebody else can give to you. I think the most intimate feeling I've ever experienced is that moment of being held as I died. That is, I think, one of the most intimate, close connections that you can have with another being. And there's something I have to say about Blackburn, because I think in a lot of this journey of rediscovery, I have been so focused on integrating and feeling and moving through the emotions of my own grief, my own losses, so focused on my own loss. And I think that was true of Sallie in her lifetime, that she was pretty focused on her own loss, which was significant, and that's valid. But even now, me going back and I've been so focused on the things that I lost. This experience kind of blindsided me because I realized that I was the great loss in somebody else's life. Because I didn't feel any pain as I was dying, but my husband had to sit there with me violently convulsing in his arms, completely helpless to do anything for me. And that must have been really horrifying. That must have stayed with him a really long time, that image and that feeling of helplessness. I know how hard it is to bury somebody that you love very deeply. And I didn't think about, wow, after losing both of our daughters, he also had to bury his wife. And Sallie died when she was 40, so she wasn't old by any means. They still could have envisioned an entire life together, and they didn't get to have that. Yeah, it's incredibly humbling to realize that you were the reason why somebody else was grieving. And there was something else that came to the surface for me as well, and it was, even though I'm pretty sure that Sarah could, I say Sarah, Sallie is the same person. Sallie was a nickname for Sarah. Sallie was not able to meet Blackburn halfway in how much he loved her. She wasn't, because of all the sorrow she was carrying, she wasn't able to love him in the ways that I know he deserved. And the thing about it is, even though that was true, he never left. He stayed, in spite of her grief. He stayed whether she could meet him halfway or not. And he was the one who was there holding her when she died. And that's true love, if you ask me. And so I guess that I, in part, wanted to talk about this because I hope that one day I am able to thank him in the ways that he deserves. I hope that I hope that that man knows how sorry I am that I ever caused him grief or pain. And I'd like to say this too, that I think the world often will make us feel as if true love is a fantasy, or that's something that happens in the movies, but real life is different. And this past life experience has shown me that true love is incredibly abundant in this universe. Because if I experience two great and beautiful loves in one lifetime, then that must mean that it's out there in a lot bigger ways than what we believe or what we let ourselves realize. Also, that unconditional love is something that we're capable of. Big, true, unconditional love is very difficult, but very possible. What I had with John was very pure and very short. Except for it wasn't short because he's still around and still present in my life now. It's just love is so big that it can transform and fit our circumstance for whatever we need. that right now, John's in spirit supporting me and loving me and wanting me to live my best, most loving, most aligned life now. But that wasn't my only chance at love ever. I also had the opportunity to have love with another man later. And that man loved me so unconditionally. Sticking around and not asking somebody to get over the man they lost 10 years ago is pretty powerful. And I think, what I want to say about that is, I don't think that I'm special or magical, or that this experience is just what happens to a few special chosen people. I think this experience has come to me to show me how commonplace true love really is. It's about us choosing to rise to the challenge and us choosing to love that way. And I've had, on more than one occasion in my life, people are very confused by the unconditionality of the way that I attempt to love them. The idea that I give you this love, freely given, freely expressed, because I need you to know that you're loved. But you can do whatever you want with that. I'm not trying to manipulate you into doing what I want you to do, to being what I wish you would be. It's, I want you to know that you're loved, and I'm going to keep loving you whether you go or you stay. Whether you say you love me back or you don't. And that type of love really confuses people because it's not normal. We're not taught that is real, or that's the way that people love each other, that's what humans are capable of, and we are. We absolutely are. And I think ultimately all of us crave to be seen fully for who we are and loved for all of it. All of our darkness, all of our light, everything that's in between, the beautiful shades of what we are. And I think I'm empowered and able to give that out to other people because I've been loved that way. And I think we start here with source, right? The deepest, most unconditional love is whatever word you want to use for it. God's love, universe's love, source, the powers that be, all the forces for good, whatever you call that thing, that unconditionality, that deep divine love is gifted to us out of grace. We don't do anything to deserve it. But I think we've been gifted that type of unconditional love in order to empower us to give it to other people. And I've been so blessed to see and feel so clearly how others have shown up for me with that unconditional love and held space for me in other lifetimes, in this lifetime. This whole experience has been shattering to my identity, the identity that I've had before. I did not believe really in reincarnation or any of that a few years ago. I've had to completely reshape my worldview. I've had to be brave enough to talk about my experiences, even when that's been terrifying. And I think the only way that I've been strong enough or brave enough to show up in that way, to be vulnerable with other people, to put my heart out on my sleeve and give it away freely and let it be broken. The only reason why I can do that is because of these. I got cut off, which is super fun. I don't really remember where I was at or what I was saying, but I do. I think I just want to end with. I just want to end with saying that number one, that I don't think death is as scary as most people think. That our souls are pretty eternal, and we can't be making our choices or living our life in fear of death. I think if more people knew that our time is really endless, and so it's what are we going to do with that time, I think the world would be different and people would live very differently if they felt like it wasn't just I have one chance and that's all, or things can be taken from me, or love can be lost. I think I would want Blackburn to know that it didn't hurt, and that his presence with me made leaving an experience that was peaceful and comforting, and that I knew I was safe in the arms of someone I loved. I think the sad thing is that was probably the moment that I realized that I was sad to go, that I did have somebody who loved me very dearly who I was leaving behind. That was the painful part, was realizing that I was causing him pain. So I hope that one day I'll get to tell him, and I hope that one day we'll get to resolve those things between us, and that there was something I heard pretty recently. I think it's a Hawaiian tradition. It's basically that you repeat the phrase, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. And I think that's what I wish he could hear. Because there is so much, I think the more I go into this work and the more that I see, the more that I realize how completely surrounded by love we are if we open our eyes to see it. And I'm so grateful for the sacrifices of the other souls in my life, the sacrifices they made to show me how deeply loved I am. And I feel it's part of my mission here to give that back, because love just multiplies and multiplies and grows. There's no limit to it. So I hope that some form of a common thread or a thread of thoughts reached you and made sense to you of all of that. But part of the okay, apparently they think I'm done talking since they keep cutting me off. So I just wish you all the best, and I hope that you have a wonderful holiday season and an amazing new year, and I will see you on the other side.